Here we go, one more C3 project. So this is Doug's 1976 Corvette, and we have a lot of work to do, but it's actually a fairly decent car. So the main work we're going to do on this car is we're going to do brakes. The saddest part about this car, he's had it, he's worked on it, but he's never actually driven it around because it's needed brakes. So we're going to do brakes, but we're also going to do some interior work, get some stuff in the interior done. But we'll get to that when we get to that. But first we got to do the brakes. So we got to get it up in the air, take these ginormous wheels and tires off, and see what we have to work with. Well, I found the first casualty of having wheels and tires that are this big. They're so big. So you see this mark around the inside of the tire. Basically it's been eating it. And what it is there's this bracket for the parking brake, and it's been chewing up the back of that tire. So I know in the past I've seen people that relocate it, I believe up here, maybe they relocate it somewhere else so it does not rub. But that's the problem with, you know, people putting some aftermarket wheels and tires. Now I think these rims are right. I'm gonna have to check them. I think it's just the fact that these tires are huge. So we'll see what Doug wants to do. I would just get smaller tires, but since they're brand new tires, I don't know what he wants to do. Hopefully he doesn't want to put a spacer on it. We'll see. But I'm having issues getting this other side off just because I think it's doing the same thing. I think it's rubbing. The first thing we're going to do in this car is the brake job, because Doug's never driven it because the brakes have always sucked. So Doug has elected to buy everything brand new from Lone Star Caliper, which is such a great idea. So Lone Star rebuilds master cylinders and also calipers, but the cool part about them is that they test all the stuff that they rebuild, but they also put in O-rings and stainless steel sleeves in their calipers. So you see people that buy rebuilt ones from AutoZone because they want to save a few bucks, and then a year later they're doing brakes again. That's why. So they're definitely quality. We will look at this master cylinder, and you can see that the fluid is nasty. It's black, but it's also low in both sides. So that means we have leaks somewhere. If we look, this wheel I noticed had paint bubbles on it, and I believe that this caliper is leaking toward the front. You can kind of see, you know, there's a wet spot where the pads were sitting because the pads are soaked in brake fluid. So those are trash. Come around this side. This side looks a little bit better. Not much. I can't tell if that's paint or if that's leaking. And then you can see on this tire where that's been leaking out the back. So we have calipers, at least two of them that are bad. And honest truth, if the two in the back are bad, or if two of them are bad, the other two are probably close on their way out. So we will replace all of that. We will replace the master cylinder. We have brake pads in here, and there are new lines underneath all this stuff somewhere. Here we go. New brake hoses for all four corners. So we have everything that we need to. What I'm going to do now is disassemble everything all the way around and get all the old brake fluid out. What I'm going to do now is disassemble everything, get everything apart, get all the old brake fluid out, and then go from there. Here's the number one indication: you have bad calipers. So brake fluid makes paint bubble. As you can see, it's been soaking this pad and bubbling up the paint. So sadly, someone's done brakes on this car before, you know, and I think it just sat. So this is a new-ish caliper, brand new pads. It has a new brake line for the most part, but again, you let it sit and this is what happens. So it leaks out of these seals and these pistons, and it just goos everywhere. So that's what it did, and it needs replaced because it sat. So hopefully Doug won't let it sit so it does that again. Moving on to the back caliper, check this out. This is the pad that I pulled off of it. It's fuzzy because it had been soaked in brake fluid for so long. This one had an active leak. Before I even touched it, I could see drops dropping on my floor. It's also the one that was leaking all over the tire. So someone in the past did brakes. They put AutoZone calipers on it. They failed. But what I don't get is that half of the clips that hold the brake lines in are missing, and then they didn't replace the soft lines back here. Why would you go all the trouble to, do this and not replace the soft lines is beyond me. But we'll get them replaced correctly, and we'll get it done right. All the rest of the brakes are disassembled, so what's left is removing this master cylinder. I have the brake lines already popped off of it, and since I drained the master cylinder through the brake lines, nothing really leaked out. Be careful when you reinstall these in the new ones. It's really easy to cross-thread them. I've done it before. Don't do it. To get the master cylinder off, there's two 9/16 nuts on each side of it. I found the best way to do it is get a ratcheting wrench like this, and a lot of times they're on there pretty tight. I've already broken them loose, but what you can do is you can take a longer wrench like this. This is an old mechanic's trick, and you can put that on there like that, and that'll give you more leverage in order to break them free and get that off. So I've already done that. There goes my wrench. But there's a little trick for you to help you guys get these master cylinders off. Once you get the master cylinder off, a common complaint about these master cylinders is they leak out of this back seal. And as you can see, this one is also doing the same thing. What will happen, it will drip down the brake booster like this and then onto the ground. And the only way you can tell is if you're missing paint on the bottom of the booster or if the back of this is wet. And this one obviously is. So it's due for replacement just like everything else on this car. But as of right now, we have all the calipers off, all the brake lines off, and we had 3 bad ones. I'm kind of glad Doug didn't try to drive it with 3 bad calipers and a leaky master cylinder. So no good news on this. The plan will also be to replace that nasty rotor that's in the back. Here we have our first new part to go back on the car. It's a brand new master cylinder from Lone Star Caliper. I've compared it to the other one. It's exactly the same. The one thing you do need to check is the bore length. Basically just stick a screwdriver in, kind of gauge where it's at, see if it's the same as your old one that you have, and you're good. Also, if you have a smaller back reservoir than front, that means you have a master cylinder that's for a car that has discs in the front and drums in the back, which you don't want on a Corvette. So we're going to bench bleed it. Got brand new .3 brake fluid in it, and basically all you got to do is just pump it until no more bubbles come out. It takes probably about 15 minutes or so, which I won't record because it's boring, but that's how you do it. Just pump it until you get no more bubbles without any travel all the way in and all the way out. With the brakes done on Doug's car, we can move on to other things that are on his list. So the first thing is that he has a crazy oil leak in his engine. Now, these small block Chevys can leak from probably 18 different places, but the most common leak, and the one I'm going to fix first, is the valve covers. So this engine is very, very original, and original valve covers, intake, carburetor. I wouldn't be surprised if the gaskets underneath these valve covers are from 1976. The best way to see if your engine is leaking engine oil from the valve covers is run your finger under the bottom of the valve cover, and if it's wet, you know that they're bad. This other side is a lot worse than that other side. See how that's wet? So, yep, it is time to replace those. We'll do that really, really quickly, and then from there, we can put the wheels back on, we can test drive it, and kind of go and see what other things might need fixed. Another, while I'm at it, is that this hose for the vacuum for the brake booster is super de-duper hard and cracked and broken. I mean, I can't even bend it without, I'm afraid I'm going to break it. So I'll replace that because it needs replaced, and we will go from there. Check that out. That's a straight up vacuum leak. I guess it's supposed to go to the headlights. We'll remember to put that back together. Have the valve cover off. And 2 things I noticed. I don't think these are original because they're not cork, they're rubber. But with that being said, you can still see it's leaking from here, it's leaking from there, and they need replaced. So they did it wrong. They didn't glue it to the valve cover, but they're old and actually kind of brittle. So we will be replacing them. Luckily, there shouldn't be much cleanup to do. But yeah, you can see lots of leaking. While the other side is drying, we can move on to this side. Really, the only way to get this valve cover off is you have to take if you have an air conditioning compressor, you have to take the belt off of it and move it back. I mean, it usually sits right there, so I've moved it that way, which means I can get this valve cover off. Everything under here looks good except for one thing. So after I take this off, you will see it. There's a bolt that someone somewheres broke in the head right there. So there's nothing on that I can get the vice grips on. It's broken. So we're gonna have to talk to Doug and see what he wants to do about that. I'm pretty sure with that bolt broken, this sucker is gonna leak. You can kind of see it's been doing that a little bit, especially right here. Yeah, it's been leaking. So sometimes when you dig, you find problems. With the brakes done and the valve covers done, we can move on to taking the car on its first test drive. There's two things that are stopping me from doing that. One is these monster front tires. I believe the back tires will be okay, but these monster ones, whenever they turn, the inside edge will rub against the frame, or this outside edge will rub against the fender. You can actually see on this fender where it's already rubbed, I mean just a little bit. But yeah, I mean, look at this. This tire is just way, way too wide. Maybe in the back, but definitely not in the front. So that's one thing that Doug's just going to have to buy another set of tires. The other thing is there are no seat belts, and these seats are not bolted in whatsoever. So it looks like the carpet was just laid in here, but they didn't cut out any holes for the seat belts, and they didn't cut out any holes for the seat tracks. I'm going to have to take care of that for Doug. So luckily I like doing interior work, so it shouldn't take too long. Here's a test fit of the seat belt. So these only have one retractor in the back, and then here under the floor they just mount. Now the original seat belts had a retractor in the bottom and on the top. This basically, you just, instead of pulling the seat belt up over your lap like that, you pull it down and over your chest. It still sits the same at the end of the day. I think these are actually cheaper. But in order to permanently install this seatbelt, we have to install this quarter trim. So luckily, Doug has brand new screws for this retainer piece that goes right here, and that basically sandwiches right here in the door sill. So we will get that on. We'll put the little covers on for the top of the seatbelt, and that seatbelt will be done and ready to go. Work on Doug's car is going awesome. As you can see, we have the seatbelts in, we have all the roof panels in, even on this side, seatbelt and the trim. It looks really, really good. I moved on to this door because this door opens and shuts like it should, but I've run into a problem putting on this door panel. So here are two window cranks. One is a reproduction made in the USA, the other one is a Chinese reproduction. So there's quite a few differences. One is weight. This one in the USA one weighs about twice as much as this one. And you can see other things is these little splines inside the Chinese one. They only 50% of the inside has splines all the way up, where this one has splines all the way around. Also, these little nubs that hold the spring tight are big on the USA made one and really not existent on the one from China. So you really do get what you pay for. I mean, honestly, from far away, they do look very, very similar, but this Chinese one is just straight up crap. So I've been fighting trying to get this door panel on. Basically, these window cranks do a really good job of clipping the door panel on, but guess what? If they don't have enough splines inside of them, they're just going to spin and chew up the edge right there. So glad I found this one in the bin of parts. Hopefully he has a second one.